I just want to add to the welcome to our speaker, David Chadwick. Uh, I feel very lucky to have known David uh, more deeply in the time I've lived in Bali. But I first met him, I want to say either 2001 or 2002 at Tassajara when I was a student practicing there. And at that time, David would often come during the summertime, during the guest season to Tassajara, and often with his son Clay, probably with Clay, right, at that time?
It was Clay then, but before then it was my son Kelly,
Who's
who's
also
back
here.
there, who uh, spent his first 2 years there.
So when David would come with Clay at the time I was there, he was in my mind he was a bit of a like a Zen celebrity because he was the biographer of Shunryu Suzuki, the teacher who founded the centers I studied at, and he had been one of his earlier disciples. But one of the things I really noticed and appreciated about David is whenever he would come to Tassajara with his son, that they would just go to the dish shack and wash dishes. And there were other Zen teachers who would come and go, and they would always come, and you would only see them, for giving a Dharma talk in the Zendo in a very formal capacity. Um, but David would just come in as David, wash some dishes, and if he was pestered enough, he would go to the dining room and share some stories. And that really impressed me and really stuck out in my mind. And when I came here to Bali, I didn't know David was living here. Um, but I had a Zoom call with one of my friends from the Zen Center. I said, yeah, Bali is really great, but I am missing some of the Zen community from the US. And she said, well, have you looked up David Chadwick? He's there in Bali. And so I went online and went to his Cuke archive online and found his email address and sent him an email. And it was like that same day or very quickly thereafter, I got a message from him. And we figured out very quickly that we lived just a few minutes walk from each other. So this, it just turned out to be this wonderful blessing that of all people to be living so close to, and we're just a few minutes walk from one another. And so I feel very, very blessed myself. I've really enjoyed getting to know him and Katrinka more deeply, and now Kelly. And yeah, I'm just really grateful that we were able to host him here at the bookshop. So with all that, there's so much more we could share about David, but I'm sure he'll share some of it himself, and more of it can come out in the conversation. So I just want to appreciate all of you for coming again, and then hand it over to you, David, and I'll be here to ask questions and things, but I would love to have you go ahead and get started the way you would like to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, greetings, fellow visitors to Earth. And thanks, Jesse and Catherine, for starting Talking Leaves and inviting me here. And what I want to do is, I want to, as briefly as I can, tell you the story of the books I've written and how it all evolved. And, a very, very important book was when Ed Brown published the Tassar Bread book. It didn't look like this. Shambhala published it. It was like one of their first books. And the story of the Tassar Bread book is in the second Tassar Stories book. The first one is out. They have it here. And this was overnight a big seller. And it's still the best known thing to come out of Zen Center and help support Zen Center, thanks to Ed's generosity for about 10% of their budget for years, because he owned it. It wasn't a work for hire. anyway, so uh, then that same year, 1970, is In My Beginner's Mind came out, which was a book created with Shunryu Suzuki's lectures that he'd given at the Los Altos Zendo. I hold up the 50th anniversary issue, I think, uh, which has an afterword by me that tells you a great deal about the book. But there's also a great deal in Crooked Cucumber, and then in the second Tassajara Stories book. But this was overnight a big seller too. Not as big as the bread book. I'd still get, I came out with a book last September called Tassajara Stories. And people on Facebook saying Tassajara Stories. Yeah, I got the bread book when I was, uh, it, uh, it, it just had its 55th year. And so they were very important in my being able to publish because when I started publishing, there was hardly anything out like there is now. There's a great variety of books on Buddhism and stuff. But anyway, in 19, so I'd been at I've been with Zen Center for 10 years. The story of how I got there and everything like that, it's in Crooked Cucumber, it's a little bit in Thank You and Okay, and especially it's in the new book, Tassajara Stories. So I don't have to get into that. But in 1988, I went to Japan. One of my best friends was a gentleman named Michael Katz, who was a very successful agent for mainly books in the, spiritual sphere. Thomas More's Care of the Soul was a big, 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 big seller. And many other people, Zen Center, Tassajara. He was Ed Brown, became Ed Brown's agent, and for the anyway. So I played tennis with him. We were very close, and up to that point, I'd written a lot of short things. I'd written all my life, starting in the third grade, but I'd never written anything long. And he said, well, when you're in Japan, write a book about Japan. I said, well, I want to have input, not output. And he said, well, we'll see. Well, of course, I was writing in the airplane before it landed. And I would write these letters, and I'd make 12 photocopies and send them to America. And he got a hold of me. He called me in Japan, which was very expensive back then, and said, hey, these letters are good. I can we can make a book out of it and I can get you a book deal. So I got going, and what came out of that was Thank You and Okay, an American Zen failure in Japan. And Penguin published it. And in many ways, it's the most creative book I've written. And it's not well known like Crooked Cucumber, but people who've read it and stuff, a lot of them, put it up just as high as Crooked Cucumber. And both this book and Crooked Cucumber have been used in writing classes, which is funny because I hardly thought I deserved that. But anyway, continually for 35 years, they've been used, Natalie Goldberg especially. So Thank You and Okay had a lot of stuff about Suzuki in it, but I decided to take most of it out because the book really focused on Dining Katagiri, who was his assistant teacher and who I was with in a a little monastery in Japan. Well, he was visiting. He asked me to come visit just for about 5 weeks. But about half the book, Thank You and Okay, is about that 5 weeks. The other half is about living next door to a Rinzai monastery and uh, having a relationship with the Rinzai teacher there for 3.5 years. And that was wonderful. Anyway, so I started doing some interviews in Japan. When we came back in America, moved to Santa Fe, there were all these Zen students who'd moved to Santa Fe. I interviewed people there. And then coming back to the Bay Area, I started collecting Suzuki's lectures and interviewing people. And out of that came Crooked Cucumber, The Life and Zen Teaching of Shunryu Suzuki. Now, this is the only book I've done that really sold well for, a book in the Zen world. And it's, Thank You and Okay came out in 94. It's still in print. It was Penguin, now it's Shambhala. Crooked Cucumber is still Random House under different imprints, it changes. And the reason it's called Crooked Cucumber is because Suzuki's nickname his master gave him was Hebo Curie. And that in the first edition, I didn't understand the meaning of what he was called because his son wouldn't tell me until after it came out that it's not Magata Curie, which is a regular size one. It's Hebo Curie, which is the runt, and it meant you useless runt. And so all the changes that have been made since it came out in early 99, like maybe January, are on my website, cuke.com, cuke.com. And I started cuke.com in 1998, and it's what I've spent most of my time working on through the years. It's this vast oral written history. And, ever since COVID, I've been doing podcasts, emails, everything. It's enormous. Really, it's a labyrinth. So anyway, so that was this book. Then, so my time was really involved with archiving Shunryu Suzuki's lectures, working on cuke.com. But in 2008, Alan Senaki, the dear late abbot of the Berkeley Zen Center, got hold of me and said, "Hey, David, let's both write a book in November." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, there's the NaNoWriMo National Novel Writing Contest, and you've got to write a whole book in November. And if you do, you just upload the book on their site. They count the number of words and then delete it." I went, okay. Always working on all this other stuff, the archiving, but it was nice. And I had spent a good deal of time. Well, I had spent a month in 2003 visiting Australia, visiting an old girlfriend of mine, a brief, we were very close. And I'd taken tons of notes. And I based this book on that. And I both reviewed all the cool things we did, and I made up a ridiculous, fantastic story that goes along with it. And no, I knew a lot of people in publishing, but I get the feeling they were all embarrassed when I sent it to them, and so I self-published it, and it's called "To Find the Girl from Perth." It's the most flawed thing I've done. I illustrated it. I did the cover. It's got 45 illustrations. I did a CD of songs because that's what I did before I went to Japan. I wrote songs, lots of them, and made, some albums and cassettes and CDs and stuff. So I did a whole CD of songs to go with it. And I made my own CDs and my own DVDs with the book. That was my first audio book, 2008, that I made with a low quality mic. Well, and in my office in John Terrence barn in Sonoma County. Anyway, so that was fun. Instantly, I, and then I didn't promote it. I just self-published it. And then I found out how easy that was to do. So I had this idea of a sort of concept book. So I did the book. Now this book has nothing but the word "the" in it. And the poet laureate of the Museum of Modern Art gave me a blurb. It's not in the book, it's on the website, because he was an authority on what's called uncreative writing. And anyway, so that's the only perfect thing I've ever done. And it then, oh, but before that, I forgot. Before, right after Crooked Cucumber, the first year it was hardback, then it comes out in paperback. And the year after that, we did a book about Suzuki, just vignettes, little stories about him, and memories. A whole little book called To Shine One Corner of the World. And that was Random House 2. I did that when I was involved with that Australian woman. So with Thank You Okay and Crooked Cucumber, I'd done a lot of work on helping to promote them because I had publishers, setting up book signings and stuff. But with it, I was distracted, and it only stayed in print a couple of years. And then Shambhala picked it up and did it as Zen is Right Here. So that is, to a lot of people, the most accessible one because, you can just open it up and read these little stories. Like the first one is, I think it's from Ed Brown. One morning in Zazen, Suzuki spoke up and he said, "You're all perfect as you are, and you could use a little improvement." you know. So there's a lot of great ones. And then years later, the president of Shambhala told me that's his favorite book. I said, "Really?" I said I could do another one. So out of that came Zen is Right Now. And this is still hardback. And they made it as a hardback set. They redid Zen is Right Here, but Zen is Right Here is also available as a paperback. So then there was this woman at Tassajara who did 10 years of research on the history of Tassajara before the Zen Center. And she made a little scrapbook that was sitting on the desk in the office. And I got hold of Leslie James, who was sort of in charge at Tassajara, not that long ago, really. I don't know, 2018. And I said, "Can you get me a PDF? Can you photocopy that? I'd like to do something with it." And well, it turned out somebody was already doing that. And so I got involved with the son of the woman who did it, Marilyn McDonald. And I in the meantime, somebody had started working with me, a guy named Peter Ford, um, like 15 years ago. And I mean, seriously, worked like full time on Cuke Archives. Uh, and he was an IT person and helped, make it much, much more accessible. But it can't take the fact that it's a big mess away from it that easy. But anyway, Peter and me and Larry Burns, whose mother did it, and we brought in Andrew Main, who'd worked on the Holler catalog, who knew about desktop publishing, and took a long time, and we came out with A Brief History of Tassajara. And so I'm the editor, Marilyn McDonald's the writer, and Zen Center buys a bunch of them. And I self-published it under Cuke Press, C-U-K-E Press. And
David, would you just say briefly for those who don't know what Tassajara is?
oh yeah, well that's I'll get to that. That's the last book. Um, and as a matter of fact, it's already next. Um, um, Tassajara, this is the book came out last September. Tassajara stories, well, a sort of memoir oral history of the first Zen Buddhist monastery in the West. The first year, 1967. Well, it brings you up to 1967 and tells you about the first year. And so, like it said, it's the first Zen Buddhist monastery in the West, almost the first Buddhist monastery. But there's a group of Tibetan monks who are in New Jersey, who started a center. It's still going, and it was available to outsiders to come. It was a more traditional monastery. It started a few years before Tassajara. So the Tassajara stories tells about how we got Tassajara. Now, Tassajara was the oldest resort in Monterey County, California. No, the oldest, most best known. It's a hot springs at the end of a 14-mile treacherous road that goes from 1,300 feet up to 5,000 back to 1,300 that frightens people to death. And I know that road very well. And Tassajara Stories has a whole chapter on it. There's a great deal about it in there. Anyway, it not only tells about Tassajara, but it tells about the whole era. What brought us there. That's why it's called a sort of empire. A sort of what was the word I used? A sort of memoir.
Yeah.
Oral history. So it tells how people got there, It tells stories from the guests. It tells all sorts of stuff. Welcome, Krishna. Krishna Fluke. And anyway, I think that about does it. I'm right now just doing the final touches on the audiobook for it. I did audiobooks. And Michael Katz, incidentally, who got me into all this and he's the one that got me to start podcasts during COVID. He's the one that got me to do audiobooks. I mean, he didn't get me, he just said, I think you ought to do podcasts now. He was a man of few words. And whatever he said, I'd do. And I call him my co-conspirator in Cuke Archives. He's also by far the biggest financial supporter because except for Crooked Cucumber and the Teshama corner of the world, which followed it, which supported me and my prior family for 10 years, publishing has become pretty much pro bono. Uh, and, you know, it used to hear more people write poetry than read poetry. You could say now more people publish books than read them. I mean, wow. Nowadays, it's so easy to publish a book. People get hold of me. I said, don't print books up. Do print on demand. You know, you can do it for free. Uh, and I learned a lot about that in a, a brief history of Tassajara. I spent way too much money on the learning curve, but that happens a lot when you get into something new. Anyway, that's the story of how I still do music, incidentally. I've published 5 albums. Uh, they're on my artist pages of music with local musicians that I did during COVID because they were out of work and they were very, very good ones. Um, and I have my old underground music on there, like 12 different albums. So that's it.
Thank you for the tour of your books, David. Saves me a lot of homework that I didn't completely do. But what I wanted to say was, so first of all, everyone, this is a conversation. So uh, we will open it up for your questions and your curiosities about David's uh, writing, his history, his life. But to just get things started, I wanted to say, you know, you said that there's more people publishing now than reading, but I don't want to minimize the value of what you've written because it's been very moving. The Crooked Cucumber and Thank You and Okay very much were like part of my inspiration as a young Zen student and really contributed to my understanding of the context in which it all happened. And more recently, I've been reading Tassajara stories. I'm close to the end now. And there were a few moments I just cried. And I mean, really, genuinely, like I moved to tears.
Really?
And one of those moments was you described the moment when the opening of the first practice period and the Zen teacher that came up from Mexico City,
Oh,
was his
yeah.
name Echo?
Joe Takata.
Icho Takada. So in the book, if I'd been doing my homework, I would have bookmarked it, be able to read straight from his words. But in the book, there's a moment where he describes this is the coming together of the first Zen Ango or practice period in the first Zen monastery in the West. And it's a coming together of all these great acts of kindness from so many different people. And just the cast of characters that comes through at this time that he's describing in this book, it's like a who's who of, poetry, musicians, spiritual teachers from that time. You name them, they were either mentioned in the book or they actually came through Tassajara at that time. And the scene that I cried was you were describing uh, this Rinzai Zen teacher who had been in Mexico City, another Japanese Zen teacher. He came up to Tassajara to help with uh, give a ceremonial item for the start of this practice period. And he just came walking across this road that, he just described, this road that's just so treacherous and goes, very long, lots of changes in altitude. And he just comes strolling down the road bearing this ceremonial item to gift to Shunryu Suzuki to lead the first practice period. And he's from a different Zen tradition. So there's a whole story about that, about the transmutation of the stick from one tradition to another. And then he leaves. He goes back up the road again. He literally walks in to give this
Yeah,
thing, right?
right.
And it's like something you see in a movie, right? It's just like this fantastical moment. And there's so many of those in the book. So I just, what I really appreciate about your writing is how you you told me once something about how, people ask for your take and you just say, well, I just report what happened or something like that. And the way you articulate these moments of what happened back in that time is really deeply moving to me. Just really brought it to life. So I appreciate you for taking the time to record it in that way.
Yeah, well, my pleasure.
And a, a question I had to just kind of get the conversation going is, I, you know, you've spent clearly you've been a devoted longtime student of Shunryu Suzuki all the way until now. You carry forward his what you gathered from him and your experience of him. And your books, so many of them report on or describe, the man himself, the community that grew up around him, the place, the Tassajara that was uh, built up to support his teachings. And I guess I'm curious to ask you, now at this end of your life, having journeyed this far with all of these stories, with your um, connection with Shunryu Suzuki and that whole community of friends and companions of yours for a whole life, what I know you don't want to share takeaways, but I guess I'm curious, like, what's your perspective on that now, and maybe how has that changed since you first met Shunryu Suzuki, your perspective and understanding of what that period was about and who the man was and what the teaching and the impact on you is.
Well, it's always evolving.
Yeah.
Uh, and the hardest thing is to pinpoint what Suzuki's teaching was. Uh, and it's very elusive. Uh, and he'd say things like, I, I'm not, I can't really teach you. I can only hint. Uh, and he'd say, Buddha, Buddha didn't create Buddhism. It was already there before he spoke. He just encouraged people to practice. Uh, and then what is it? Uh, yeah, he like there were one thing I loved about Zen Center. There was nothing we had to believe. He just wanted us to practice Zazen. That's what he focused on, was Zen meditation. And we had some chanting. That was great. I loved that. And he'd give talks. And Kanagiri would give talks. And we had, you know, this is the Sokochi temple in the city, which was before Tassajara. We'd have Saturdays would be a day where there'd be like two zazins in the morning, and then, the service, and then breakfast would be brought out to us, and we'd have a breakfast, and then there'd be cleaning. We'd clean, and there wasn't a talk on that day. There'd be another zazen. The next day, Sunday, there'd be a lecture. Uh, and they did start doing sesshin, which is an extended period of zazen, 5 days, 7 days. There were a lot of one-day sessions, like on Saturday there. He started doing sessions even before. Zen Center was founded in 62, but he arrived in 59. People started coming to him right away uh, because word got out, and where he landed was in the best time in the best place, right in the middle of the Zen Watts, the Alan Watts Zen boom, you know, and tons of people came to Zen Center because of Alan Watts, and he was very helpful to Suzuki. Now, Watts' and D.T. Suzuki's books were extremely influential too, but they didn't emphasize practice. And they emphasized Satori so much, like instant enlightenment, that and all these fantastic stories about monks and very dramatic stuff, that people expected that. And they'd come to Suzuki and he'd say, well, we sit at, when was it, 5:30 in the morning or something, and please come join us. And then his zazen instructions were like, just, sit here, sit as well as you can. If you can sit in lotus, that's best. And, keep your posture erect. Don't have your chin up, sort of like, I always saw it like there's a eye bolt in your head sort of pulling you up. And is that and just sit there and follow your breath. And people would ask for more instruction. And he said, I already told you. And he'd even say things like to some people he would say, and nothing will happen. Or kind of, he'd say many things will happen. And so he left zazen to people to find out. He even thought it was good for people to come join in with the zazen before they got an instruction. Or they'd be very uncomfortable. They wouldn't know what to do. People were following particular forms. But of course, at Zen Center, which became an organization, the zazen instructions became very long and detailed. But that's not the way he did it. People would have experiences, and they'd go tell him, and they'd think they were enlightened. He'd say, very good, well, just keep sitting.
Keep sitting.
So what his teaching was very, it was like moment to moment, different. That's very traditional. The sixth patriarch, who he held up in very high esteem, said to his disciples, had many disciples, as he was dying, he said, look, everybody's in a world of duality. They've got pairs of opposites, so they'll come to you with one side, just go to the other. Just knock them off the side they're on. And that was his final teaching to his disciples before he died. So anyway, that's enough of that. Anything else?
Well, just a quick follow-up question to that. So, what did you find out from many things happening or nothing happening?
Well, I grew up in a home, and I talk about this, especially in the Tatsar Stories book, where we read the Gospels, but not in a literal sense. There was, it didn't even use the word God, but we used the word mind, which is used in Buddhism a great deal too. Like Buddha was asked, well, what created the universe? And he said, there's no creator other than mind itself. Actually, this isn't just Buddhism. This is Hinduism. If you go down original, if you look at the Upanishads, that's the real teaching to me in Hinduism. And the Advaita Vedanta teachers like Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta, they're sort of like Zen Hinduism. No nonsense, well, now where were we?
Right here.
You're sharing on, well, I asked you the question, what did you find?
What did
for
I
your
find?
practice?
Well,
And then
you
you're
said-
I
you're
just
talking about
found just what I just found keep doing it. It gets better and better. It's very hard to find. You know, one thing he said was he'd say we practice Zen so that, and then he'd say different things, right? So none of them were absolute, but one of them was so we can enjoy our old age, and I've certainly found that to be true. Um, And oh, you know, one thing I liked about Zen Center is nobody asked me for money. I wasn't even asked to be a member. I never became a member. I'm an automatic member because got to be a head monk, so I'm an automatic lifetime member. But I don't ever remember joining anything. And I had a little family money, so I gave money, you know, like toward Tassar. Not a lot. I didn't have enough where I didn't have to work. But early on, I was working for Zen Center. You know, I was one of the first people to go to Tassajara after we bought it. And so for 10 years, I was what I call a company man at Zen Center. So I didn't have to think about, you know, earning money or anything. I don't know. And somehow I haven't had many normal jobs in my life. It's always just sort of worked out. I did work for the California Conservation Corps for Jerry Brown. He personally asked me because in the third Tassajara Stories book, it tells about him coming to Tassajara. I was director when he came. And incidentally, I sent him Tassajara Stories. He read it right away and put a blurb for it on X, which was very nice of him. And he does not do things like that. He's not a person you ask for favors or anything. He did that on his own. And it led to a bunch of back and forth between us about when he came and the details and everything. And he's in his 90s now and really doing well, very bright. And he's really a great governor. He was the most frugal governor in California history. Reagan was the most extravagant, and not what people think, right? And you know why Brown was called Governor Moonbeam? Because he wanted California to have a satellite that would have saved it billions of dollars if they'd done it. Anyway, a little off subject there. So what did I get out of it? I just got out of it, keep doing it. I don't think about Buddhism much or anything. I work with it, so I don't have to. Just keep doing it. Of course, I did through the years. I got into a lot of study.
Well, and may I just, I know you've shared this with me as well, but I thought it might be fun for people here to hear when you say keep doing it, what's your practice these days? How do you
Well, I
consciously?
still sit Zazen. It's a little harder for me now, but I lie down a lot. But I never could lie down and meditate, but I can now because I lie down so much. But I sit in the morning. I've always sat in the morning, and I can sit half lotus for a long time. I'm very lucky.
And when you sit now, do you continue to follow the breath, or is there another way you
Yeah,
focus your
I
attention?
do. I also, there's a local healer, Murta Ada, I got involved with, who also studied Vipassana with the great Bhante Giri, who founded Brahma Vihara Rama up in Singharaj, the big Buddhist temple up there, which isn't, it doesn't have a priest. It just has a manager, and they have Vipassana retreats and different things. So I did a bunch of Vipassana retreats with Myanmar monks. I liked them, but you know, I think the last one was like 5 years ago. It got too hard. You know, it's an hour of sitting, an hour and walking all day long. Uh, that was good. So just keep sitting. Yeah, follow the breath. But Murtada had us say anicca, which means transience. Uh, and he's a sort of healer, but he teach people how to heal themselves. So I do say anicca a lot, and I say thank you. Uh, and that is dealt with in the first book, Thank You and Okay. I say thank you a lot. Uh, I say thank you to everything. Um, and but sometimes it's just breath. You know, that's the best.
So is that the instruction of Zazen? To sit and watch the breath?
Yeah.
I mean, like when you go
Yeah.
to that center.
Yeah, I don't like guided meditation. I don't like talking during it.
So it's just sitting quietly in the position and
Yeah.
observing the breath and
Yeah.
being aware of it.
Yeah, well, you know, if I instantly I never became a teacher, which saved me a lot of a lot of difficulty because it's sort of a sacrifice to become a teacher because, you know, people start attacking you and stuff. But if I taught Zazen to a group of people who didn't know, I just say, first thing, let's just sit here and be still for, you know, for a while. The Jesuits have a saying, be still and know God. So being still is the first thing. And but people develop, there's different things. Koans, which were, is the Rinzai way of doing it, are used a great deal. And Suzuki would lecture on koans all the time, which are sort of paradoxical events and stories that have no logical answer. So with a koan, and Katrina does koan work. With a koan, you focus on your koan. And I did a koan at Sogenshi in Japan. And I did the famous one. What's the nature of? No, does a dog have Buddha nature? And does a dog have Buddha nature? And it was some teacher was asked, and he answered, "Moo." And moo means no, but moo also means neither yes nor no.
Oh, I called you cow.
Huh? Well, actually, I talk about that in Thank You and Okay too. And we had bullfrogs at the temple there, and they would make sounds that sounded like cows, really deep when when they were out. You get a lot. You have times here after a big rain. Sometimes you'll hear a lot of frogs. So my mother-in-law was visiting. She wants what's that? What's that noise we keep hearing? I said, oh, there's a dairy just over the mountain there, and that's the cow. She went, oh. But moo didn't mean no. Moo is more like the Hindu neti, not this, not that. That's it, neti. That's great. You know, what is the truth? What's the ultimate answer? Not this, not that.
Dad, I have a question.
Yeah.
When you say not this, not that, and I remember the Heart Sutra just in many different ways saying,
What?
I think of the Heart Sutra,
Yeah,
where it has many different ways of saying that it's nothing.
right.
And then Taoism says that it can't be touched, it can't be.
Oh, yeah.
It just seems extremely simple. And, like, why is there so many books in Zen and why do people think so hard that that's all it is?
Yeah, well, Suzuki was asked, he was asked this a number of times, different ways. Well, since Zen is called the way beyond words and letters, why do we need to study at all? He said, well, I wish I could tell you it wasn't necessary, but it is. All the lineages that tried to practice no reading, no writing, disappeared. So the Heart Sutra that Kelly's referring to came with Mahayana Buddhism, and it was refuting the assumptions of original Buddhism that many Theravada Buddhists have come to assume that all these things were true. And the Heart Sutra systematically takes everything that was fundamental Buddhism and saying it's empty, and it just goes all the way through it. And it ends with a mantra. Incidentally, the great Christian saint, Catholic saint, Pseudo-Dionysius, pseudo means it was an anonymous monk that signed Dionysius. And his absolutely magnificent mystical theology, he does the same thing with Christianity. It's just, first he named all the names of God he does, from the highest to the lowest. So God is omniscient, God is all that stuff, down to the lowest, down. God is angry, God is drunk, right? God is wrathful. And then he says you start at the bottom and start denying it all. And his, I read at least once a year, I read his mystical theology. It's very short, and it's on Kook.com. And the way to find things there is go to the site search box. Don't try to figure it out through through all the folders. It's like, it's not soul, it's not spirit, it's not kingship, it's not, it just everything that was held holy, he just says it's not. It's really great.
I
But
have another question.
yeah,
Like you've been in this movement for a long time, and you mentioned Alan Watts. And what I'm wondering is, can you see in the world around you, or, like, has there been a change in society? Has there been an opening between people that are interested in these kind of subjects? Because me being just a normal woman, I always like to see love and compassion for all sentient beings. And has that, in your experience, flourished?
but that's fundamental to Buddhism. Yeah. Certainly, there's the Metta Sutta, which emphasizes that, and it's chanted at the Zen Center. Yeah, I mean, Suzuki's approach was that is your natural state of mind.
To be compassionate and kind.
To be kind and compassionate. And the way to awaken that is zazen and practice. And what is practice? It's bringing your zazen, your meditation, into your everyday life. And that's really essential. Alan Watts didn't emphasize that. But, and I have some on Alan Watts in Crooked Cucumber because he was so important in first and helping Suzuki. And I have more on him in the third book and the second book too. And the third book, not a great deal, but some. And the thing is, so many people came to Zen Center because of reading Alan Watson, especially listening to his KQED programs on the radio. He was on TV too. And Alan Watson, he was an alcoholic, and he could be really drunk and sit down and you just become totally lucid. And he could explain, he could explain like the basis of not only Eastern thought, but all religion, going down to the perennial philosophy, which is, Aldous Huxley wrote a book called that, the essence of what it's about, not literalism. Literalism, which is what everybody thinks religion is it when you see the anti-God people, Christopher Hitchens and all of them, they're just talking about literalism. They're not talking about what it's really about. I loved it. Tom Hartman had, like the leading progressive talk show person in America. He had Christopher Hitchens. He had him on, and Hitchens was saying all this stuff about there's no God because of blah, blah, blah. And Hartman at some point said, yeah, that's all true, but don't you feel like shooting fish in a barrel? To say, and Neil deGrasse Tyson does the same thing. He puts out things on religion. It's not about religion, it's about literalism, which people call fundamentalism, but it's not fundamentalism, it's superficialism. It is not what it was ever about. None of it can be taken literally. And I was very fortunate to grow up in a home where I learned how to see things for what the more underlying meaning was. And we saw Jesus as an enlightened person. And we didn't use the word God much, but it's just a word for the absolute, for the unknown, the unknowable. Anyway.
A follow-up question to what the woman asked you, which is how given your practice and your understanding of these things and everything you've seen since you first encountered Suzuki Roshi, or even since your own beginnings of spiritual inquiry, when you come to today, how do you reconcile that with what you see in society or in politics or culture? Is there a way in which the practice extends out to change in society that you see?
Yeah, well, engaged Buddhism is a really big deal. Trying to imply one's Buddhist practice to include, a lot of it is helping, which, the Catholic Church has really been into, with, they've done a lot of bad things, but they do good things too. With their charities and so much focus on helping the poor and the poor and the lame, and all that. But also, there's been, I was very involved in the nuclear freeze movement I've had some involvement in environmentalism. I had some involvement in the civil rights movement and SDS, Students for a Democratic Society, before I came to Zen Center. I hope I've got a book almost finished about that called Freedom Songs, My Journey Through 1964, which I'm going to try to finish. I might have to self-publish it. I don't know. But engaged Buddhism is, I mean, like the Zen Center had individually, not as an institution, had a great deal of involvement with the nuclear freeze. And the abbot was really behind it. He's really into this. And, you know, back in the anti-Vietnam War, a lot of people, they actually brought Suzuki along on an anti-Vietnam War peace march. But he just did it because students asked him to come. It wasn't his country. And there's a great deal in Cucumber about his role in the war in Japan and what happened there. That's very interesting. And it all comes from people who are with him. It doesn't come from me doing research and stuff. It all comes from people who are with him, who I interviewed. So engaged Buddhism is a big deal. I mean, like Gary Snyder has always been into it, you know, protecting nature and this and that. But in Buddhism, you take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Buddha is, you know, the Dharmakaya is the sort of unknowable ground of being or whatever. And Dharma is the teaching, and Sangha is the community. And, you know, Sangha can just be those of us at Zen Center, but it can be all sentient beings, which is really Buddhism's focus. And every morning I recite the 4 vows. I do it in Japanese. You know, beings are numberless. I vow to save them. And save there means to respect them. That's what love means in the Bible. It's respect. The word that's translated as love, it's respect. Because love's sort of an amorphous word, you know. But respect is what other beings deserve. Like in terms of civil rights and stuff, respecting other people's rights is more important than loving them. You don't have to love them. You can not want to be around them. You can think they're inferior or whatever, but if you respect their rights, that's the important thing. So that's my approach. It's not trying to change people's minds, but saying, let's respect others. Not that I do much about it. There's so much has come out of the Zen Center, but so many people became social workers and therapists of different types and involved with, you know, like anti-nuclear work. And I focused on nuclear weapons because that's what it's still right now. And Jerry Brown too, same thing. Jerry Brown's focuses were on the threat of nuclear war and climate change. And he's still very involved, very high levels in groups that have to do with that. Those are the big threats. But AI too is coming. We don't know. Everything's going to be different. We don't know what it's going to be like, you know.
Ima had a question.
Advice is the right word, but we often say, just keep doing it. if you were talking to someone who has no knowledge of what Zen stands for, and they come and tell you why, how would you answer that? Why should I people having social or personal development, if you will something better to the community? How would you explain that to someone who's completely alien to the world? I assume the essence of what it means for you.
Hey, repeat that.
Tell me if I'm getting it, but what I understand her question to be is if Suzuki's often advice was just keep doing it, practice, how would you explain that to someone who's really not of the Zen world or kind of alien to the practice, and they're
What's the pure essence?
what will you get out of that? What's the essence of Zen? What is this about?
Well, you know, Zen practice is just for someone who wants to do it. It's not, we were never proselytizers. So, but if you know someone else who has another approach, just talk to them. Do your best. You know, just be sincere. Respect them. The best thing to do is listen. Just listening to others is the best thing. And that's, you know, hard to do if you're like really talkative like me. But that's the most important thing to do with others. Just listen to them. They have their own path. I really feel like Chardin, you know, the Catholic scholar. I guess he was a priest. I don't know. I can't, Teilhard Chardin or something. He said, we're not physical beings. Somebody, it's a famous quote, but it's something like, we're not physical beings looking for our spiritual side. We're spiritual beings trying to awaken to our spiritual side or something like that.
Spiritual beings having a human experience.
Yeah, we're all, you can look at it so many people look at it so many different ways. To me, there is no right way to look at things. Just somebody else tells you the way they see things, just listen to them. But to me, we're all all beings are on a spiritual path. If you look at the Advaita Vedanta people, like all the center thing to them is that feeling we have of I exist. And like to Ramana Maharshi, Nisargadatta, that feeling you have that I exist, that is the ultimate. That's where it is. That's the door through it. Because all beings have that feeling. I mean, now I don't know about other beings, but like Muji, he's pretty well known Advaita Vedanta teacher. He said every bug has that. And yeah.
Talking about Advaita Vedanta, I have seen a few people in that group, maybe Muji, who insist on this freedom and this who am I am already that or not that, neither
Yeah.
that. And then in their daily life, their behavior is just really unacceptable. So in my whatever past search, whatever, I feel I need with all these practices, I also want to be able to transform my personality and to look into my dark spots and to get them lightened up. Because yeah, I mean, I know people around Muji and Papaji who just beat up their wives and said, you know what, you're already free. Don't you worry. You don't have to do anything. So there is this kind of a, you know, like the same with service and taking care of oneself. Where is this balance and how do we find this balance
Yeah.
in being of service to everybody else, including ourselves, and how to use these practices to become better versions of ourselves?
Yeah. Well, of course, all religious groups,
I was just trying to do it wrong.
uh,
I didn't know the right,
all religious groups are full of people who have understandings that seem really wrong. You know, are that, and all you can do is have your own understanding that seems right. I mean, all institutions go bad. Ivan Illich wrote something in a book I'll never forget. All institutions inevitably come to thwart the purpose for which they were founded. And I've experienced that. But institutions are necessary. So institutions frequently go through crisis, where they sort of like rededicate themselves. But most teachers go through crisis. Institutions tend to get rid of the founding teacher at some point. Those things, and you know, you can look at very extreme examples of, you know, stuff that happened in the Catholic Church at different times in its history, where it just became a nightmare. So
Well, and
yeah,
when this conversation has me thinking about how, oh, sorry.
Hi. So I requested that people park by our parking signs, and now security's come and told we've got to move the cars off of the sidewalk and park on the side with the parking. So anyone who's parked on the sidewalk, I'm going to ask you to go move your car now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Helping keep our relationship with the security.
On this side or just on the sidewalk?
We have an agreement, and I did request everyone park by the parking signs, and
Yeah,
people,
who asked you
Yeah.
to do that?
any.
the secure, the
Banjar.
Banjar.
Go to the other.
Oh,
side of the
Banjar.
Yeah,
street.
yeah, yeah.
But I'm on the street.
But you have to be on that side.
That side of the street. Yeah.
Yeah, the Banjar, the Echelon from the Banjar said that.
Yeah.
They're the people that run the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
My bike's on the. I should.
If it's just a scooter, it's fine. Yeah,
Oh, my baby was.
it can be a challenge when we're used to doing whatever we want, wherever we feel. And it's good to pay attention to the relationships and connections when we walk into someone else's space.
I have a question. You mentioned early on in the talk about your upbringing in the Christian tradition. And it sounded like it was much more holistic. It wasn't just, this is God, this is Jesus, this is the Holy Spirit. It sounded like it was much more, so I have some questions on that. For instance, did your parents or you study the Book of Thomas, for instance,
The
which
book
is
of what?
Thomas.
the Book of Thomas, which is
No.
Zen koans, basically.
No.
And because it's not in the scriptures, it's a separate.
Yeah.
Or did you explore the fact that Isa, the monk in India, was actually Jesus during the lost?
No.
So that was not.
No.
Was there any?
No. It's all later stuff. Yeah. And the Essene Gospels, they were all created in the 20th century.
Yeah.
And but no, actually, my father got more actually, the type of Christianity is what they call New Thought Christianity. It was very big in the first part of the 20th century, say starting in the 20s. New Thought Christianity was non-literal. A lot of it emphasized healing, like Christian Science Church is one of the foundations of it. But there's the Church of Religious Science started by Ernest Holmes. It's still going, you know. And there was a guy named Fox. Was it Emmett Fox? Or was that somebody else who lectured extensively around the country? He comes out of Emerson and Thoreau, really. And they were very influenced by Hinduism and somewhat Buddhism too. So anyway.
How do you see your education or learning being changed by AI, or has it?
You mean now?
Yes.
I use ChatGPT and Claude AI a lot, but I do not use them for creating material, writing, or opinion. I use them for research. They're really good at research. They're really good at explaining contracts, explaining, I get a lot of test results now, great at explaining test results. So that when I see a doctor, I really know what the test said. Great at, sometimes I will be looking for a word, and so I'll just go to ChatGPT and say, hey, what's another word for so-and-so? My mind will go blank. I can't remember simple English words sometimes. In Indonesian, I'll look at a word that I've known for years, and I won't know what it means, And what's that again? Now I use Google Translate, but it's crude. If sometimes I see a Google Translate where I go, I don't think that's a good one, just go to ChatGPT and it'll give me a list of nuanced ways to translate that word. ChatGPT is very good at nuance of language. And Google Translate isn't. But I use Google Translate more because ChatGPT says too much. Incidentally, I have you've got a professional setting. You can just tell it, put it on professional, and that eliminates a lot of the excess. And you don't, you don't want any no encouragement, no buttering up. I mean, it's got so many bad things programmed into it to make people use it that aren't good. We'll see, but listen, both of them. Claude AI is very good too. It's much more sophisticated in many ways and has more AIs. It even has an AI just to ask it about Claude. But I use ChatGPT more. I use it a lot. But like I said, not for screwing around. Well, sometimes I do. Look, I'll tell you one great example there. I said to it, hey, and this is research, pure research. I said, Meister Eckhart said the essence, the best practice is to know nothing, want nothing, have nothing. I said, and I remember that. But in that, I guess, sermon or something, he said, well, the neighboring priest or so-and-so suggests this. And that's a very good practice, but even better is know nothing, have nothing, want nothing. Incidentally, know nothing, have nothing, want nothing does not mean you don't know things, want things, or have things. It's talking about a higher level, and you can know things, have things, and want things, but, don't worship them. What does worship mean? It means just pay attention to, really. Or not pay attention. It means focus on, so things, but you know, they're temporary, they're relative. You want things, but again, they're temporary, they're relative. You have things, but you know, really you don't own anything. It's all just stuff that comes and goes. So I said to ChatGPT, but he said this other minister, this other priest, whatever, I think, what was he? Maestro Eckhart, was he a Dominican or something? Anyway, he said, what he says is good, but the better is so and so. I said, what did that other guy say? I couldn't, you know, and it, boy, Sermon 52, you know, gave the name of him and exactly what he said, just came right down. And you see, it doesn't search the internet for that. It's already in its training, so it's got it instantly. Another thing I do, I very seldom screw around, but one time Katrinka and I we're listening to some classical music. We got into a talk about classical composers. And I was trying to put them in order and stuff. So I just asked ChatGPT, well, it knows everything, you know, you know, what the evolution of it was and what, you know, who came first and later and who influenced who. It was great. And then I said, well, and I don't use a voice. Voice is awful. It uses all its energy to create the voice, and it's not near as good. It irritates me to death anyway. And ChatGPT has a voice recognition that's far superior to the iPhone. It's a little mic there in the answer thing. And so I'll talk and it'll print it out. So we're basically writing to each other. And I told it about how when I was like a little tiny baby, you know, maybe more than a baby, maybe 2 years old, growing on the floor, music my mother would play. And my mother was a pianist, and you know, she was on the opera board and had a string quartet and stuff. She'd play some stuff, but she played popular music. And I said, some stuff I didn't like, it had bad vibes. And some stuff I did. It was like I was born with some taste. It was very interesting because I couldn't express anything, but something would come on and I'd go, oh, that makes me feel bad, you know, but I wouldn't even know how to express it to myself. All right, so I talked to it about my evolution, but what really turned me on is when I was 10 years old, I started listening to this radio station that played the emerging rhythm and blues. And I got to know the DJ. And me and a friend of mine would go out there, and there were some other people and a Catholic priest. And, you know, I got to know the black rhythm and blues, and that turned me on totally, you know. So I could mention to ChatGPT, you know, a very obscure song back then. I really, well, it'd tell me everything about it, you know. And when it came out, what its influence, went through all my favorite songs and everything. It was great. No one in the world would know as much as it did, you know. And then how I got into folk music and jazz, and it said that's a very unusual progression. People usually start with folk music, but anyway, it was great at that. And I just spent an evening talking to it about all that and reminiscing about all the music I, you know, liked, and that was wonderful. Yeah.
You said that you're not interested in proselytizing. That's important, I think, for Zen Buddhism and also for other philosophies like Stoicism. But it seems to me, I agree with what you said about the literalism of people like Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens. They take everything very literally against religion, but it seems that we're increasingly literal, whether it's in a religious sense or an anti-religious sense. And the thinking of people like the Stoics and Zen Buddhists seems to me increasingly important. So do you have a thought about how we can disseminate these important philosophies in a way that's not proselytizing.
Help me.
Sorry.
Well, what I heard, and again, tell me if I'm getting it right, is that for those of us who agree with non-proselytizing,
What's
but
that?
not trying to convert people to our way of thinking, right? Proselytizing, yeah, when you try to convert people to your influence their opinion, right? But for those of us who are in agreement that that's a good way to go, is to not proselytize. At the same time, if you would like to disseminate the wisdom that you've gathered over the years, as you have in your book,
Yeah.
how would you do that?
Well,
How would you recommend
just any way you feel comfortable with, really. Just do whatever you feel comfortable with. And, you know, Richard Baker, who was Suzuki's successor, came out, but he called me Zen Center's converter. But I didn't try to convert people. It's just I was gregarious, and so many Zennies were introverts. So I ran the guest dining room at Tassajara. And when we started Green Restaurant, I was the maitre d'. And I tended, even if I wasn't running the dining room, even when I was work leader, I tended to be a person that related to all the guests, and continued that as assistant director and director and head monk and stuff. I was a terrible head monk, incidentally. I'm no good at that stuff, but I was good as the summer head monk when I could relate to people and guests on a, more human level or something. I don't know. But anyway, it's natural to express how you feel with people in a natural way. Just do what you feel comfortable with, Yeah.
Maybe one last question. Yeah.
This is on the off topic, on topic. When you brought up what your reaction to music as a child, I was the same. And in thinking about the spirit and the essence of what an individual is, I'm wondering if Zen has done any looking at children, at babies. There are studies where you have two babies in a room and someone pulls the head off a doll. And the reaction of those babies is so pure. It's not taught that the head should not come off the doll. They just know it. And to me, that is something that we all have that's so basic that we, in a way, we know what is good and what is
That's right.
not so good.
Right.
But we get trained with so many things. I even think it's the same with food, which I don't want to get into. Not my favorite topic. But I'm just curious about your reaction to what we can learn from how children act to things before they're trained.
Yeah, there's so much great research, and it's very impressive. So I'm glad to hear that. But you just take from it what you want. You take from it what attracts you. I think you'll naturally be attracted to things that are good for you, but you'll be attracted to things that are bad for you too. That's where judgment and discernment come in. And I've certainly been on both sides of that in my life. Yeah. One thing I want to say about AI again, it's changing. It's going to keep changing. So this might be the best days of AI, when it's really, but it might, we do not know where it's going.
It's for a good.
Huh?
AI is for good. Or not?
It's either way, man. But look, with AI now, with the administration you have in America, they're turning it over to billionaires who are irresponsible and on these weird trips. And that is completely irresponsible. And that is a threat to civilization. You know, China and Europe are much more responsible in their use of AI. And they both encourage it. They both use it for self-defense and stuff like that. But they think of the importance of it in on a global level. They're much. I mean, America has just given up all. For now, it's given up all. It just it doesn't make sense what's happening in America. You know, it's just crazy. And so the development of AI by billionaires is really bad. You know, it, you know, I know governments are bad too, but
There's more to be said on that.
yeah, you know, when I said there's take refuge in Buddha Dharma Sangha, I didn't go where I meant to. Is that we cannot take refuge in the phenomenal world.
Mhm.
We can do the best we can, but it's not our refuge.
Mhm.
And our refuge is something we have to find out, but it includes the phenomenal world. You can't separate the phenomenal world from the nominal world or whatever. And it's very hard to define what they are.
Hmm.
Uh,
That is a wonderful ending to that. Yes.
Thank you so much, David.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. You all energized me.
You can go home and sleep.